Ich heiße Erich Maria Fink.
My name is Erich Maria Fink. I'm a priest from Bavaria's Augsburg diocese in southern Germany.
Ich kam hierher nach Russland vor 7 Jahren.
I came to Russia 7 years ago.
Ist mein Kind.
Russia was my childhood dream.
Wo habe ich mir schon gedacht? Habe ich 3 Pfarreien in Deutschland zurück?
One day I thought to myself, I've left 3 parishes behind. Why am I here?
Hat das Ganze
What sense?
einen Sinn? Das waren schon manchmal tiefgehende
There were times when these were very serious questions, and if I had not felt God's hand, I would have sooner or later gone back home.
wieder nach Hause gegangen.
When I arrived in Moscow in 1991, there were only 2 churches in the region, 4 minor chapels, 7, perhaps 8 priests, of which 2 were elderly in their 80s, which effectively meant there were none. That's why I turned to many episcopates around the world, with a plea for them to send me priests. And so Father Fink arrived, saying that he would like to work in Russia. I answered, priests in Perm are stretched, and there is Berezniki. You're a German, there are Germans there. He immediately agreed. He hadn't the faintest idea where Berezniki was. I showed him on the map, and that is how the parish began. Clearly, God had sent him.
Der Bischof sagte zu mir, ja, möchte mir die Verantwortung.
The bishop told me that he wanted to make me responsible for the whole region north of Perm, an area about 500 kilometers in diameter. If one looks on a map, we lie east of Perm, which makes us the easternmost Catholic parish in Europe.
Europas. Berezniki selber hat etwa 200.000 Einwohner.
Berezniki on its own has 200,000 inhabitants, whilst the town is only 75 years old. That means that it was built in socialist times, a communist, atheist creation with no signs of religious practice, except for one Orthodox church, which was once a small village church.
Die Dorfkirche ist ganz am Rand. Mich hat dieser Priester,
Father Andrew, a priest from Perm, brought me here so that I could acquaint myself with the German babushkas. He introduced me and immediately asked, "What will we do with this priest?" And before anybody could answer, Aunt Lena began singing a hymn that from that moment forward is sung at every Holy Mass. It was a Marian hymn, Immaculate Virgin. They sang the hymn with such a deep internal conviction and so calmly that I nearly began to weep. It was during that singing that I told myself, yes, from now on this is where I will spend my life.
wo ich mein späteres Leben verbringen werde.
I think that I saw Father Fink for the first time on a public transport bus. That was a very informal meeting. Why? You board a bus and are suddenly confronted by a man in a black cloth, smiling to all and sundry. Shock. Smiling in Russia, and all the more so on the streets of Berezniki, is unheard of, though we are working on it. Nevertheless, somebody on public transport, in a rush hour squeeze, smiling, talking with children, handing out small toys and sweets, etc. That's when I saw him for the first time.
Meine Anlaufstelle war die Wohnung von der Tante Lena. Und wir haben in ihrer
Aunt Lena's apartment was my first lodging. During the first year, we used to celebrate Holy Mass in her guest room with the babushkas every day.
Man muss wissen, dass noch Ende der 80er Jahre, als die Perestroika...
One should appreciate that towards the end of the 1980s, when perestroika had already begun, In other words, shortly before the fall of the Iron Curtain, 25,000 people in our town describe themselves as German. Many have left, but at least 5,000 still live in Berezniki. Many lived in forced labor camps, following deportations, surviving in barracks to begin with, and only later moved into apartments to live in a more or less civilized manner. Their fate was terrible to begin with.
Am Anfang war das Schicksal eher schrecklich. Maria mit dem Kinde liebt, uns alle deinen Segen liebt. Ja, okay. Eugenia, erzählen Sie ein bisschen zuerst mal, woher Sie kommen.
Eugenia, tell us first where you come from, how hard your life was, and how you managed to stand by your faith.
Conditions were very difficult. We had to work very hard for very little to eat, and the frost was severe. But we did not abandon our faith. I prayed every day, sang all these hymns. I tried very hard. That's how it was. We lived under extremely hard conditions, but now it's all over. Our God has saved us. I am 93 years old, but my heart still yearns to pray. I can't wait for morning mass. When I come here, it's still cold. Sometimes even the doors are still closed. I don't have much strength as before, but life goes on.
Eugenia, are you happy with our church?
Happy? I am drawn to the church from early morning to come and pray here, whilst partaking in the Holy Mass and receiving Holy Communion strengthens me. Very much so.
Did you ever believe that we would build a church here?
No, I didn't even think about it. God sent us a priest. We love our priest. He built us this church. May God give you health and fortune for 200 years.
This church is above all God's doing.
Yes, that's very important.
Would anybody like to add anything? Bernadetta?
What can I say?
Bernadetta, when I came to visit you and see whether I was to become the local parish priest, Bernadetta said, "Of course, grab him." And that is why I stayed with you. Bernadetta, tell us how it was.
One day, Bishop Thaddeus came here to visit the German community. That was when Aunt Lena said that if he didn't send us a priest for good, the Catholic faith would disappear and there would be no one to pray. So we all asked him, all of us grannies, including myself, and he answered, "I'll think about it." And soon after he sent us Father Erich. With God's help, such a blessing befell us and such joy. We are all very happy and grateful. Father Erich already speaks better Russian than anybody, even better than us. He knows the living language. He has managed to learn it so well that he never misses a word. We are the happiest people in the whole Perm district. We have such a wonderful priest.
Millionen von Menschen sehen, dass ich von meiner Anastasia oft geschenkt bekomme. Den Frieden Gottes, dass alle spüren, wo ihr wart und wo ihr herkommt. Unser Bischof Tadeusz Kondrusewicz, sagte zu mir, ich möchte Sie nach Berezniki.
Our bishop, Tadeusz Kondrusewicz, told me, "I want to send you to Berezniki because the babushkas have prayed for this." But he also immediately added that he was charging me with finding Catholics in the whole of the northern Perm region. There are many thousands of Catholics out there who we don't know. who have been christened either by any of the babushkas or by other relatives. Some do not even know that they have been christened. Very few have had any direct contact with any faith.
Einen Zugang zum Glaubensleben bekommen. Natürlich, wir wussten, dass es in Solikamsk
We knew that there were also Catholics in Solikamsk who had survived whole decades.
Bestand hatte, dass wir jeden Donnerstag nach Solikamsk fahren.
We go there every Thursday. Once there, we celebrate Holy Mass in a small group at the German Minority Center.
What can I tell you? I am very old and very tired. I have been through much. We were a large family. 3 brothers and 4 sisters, mother, father, and 7 children in all. We lived together in one barrack. We had so very little space. We slept on narrow beds. We had nothing to put on. It was very cold, -40, at times even -50 centigrade. Our daily ration amounted to 2 loaves of bread. Father divided the bread in the morning, a piece for every child. My work was hard. I had to shift 12 tons of sulphur into the boiler every day. When I was young, I had to work 8 hours per day. They used to call us fascists, not Germans, but German fascists.
Wir warten auf euch.
We didn't understand the language. I don't speak it properly to this day. For a time there was no priest at all here. Women who recited prayers were interrogated by the police and questioned to explain exactly what they were up to. They would promise not to do it ever again. But we continued to meet in the evenings instead. We would go to meetings by various routes so as not to be noticed.
Dieser ist dazu bestimmt.
Gebet haben wir aus dem Buch Alleluia.
We used to pray from the Alleluia prayer book that we had received from the German army. Our own books and prayer books were all burnt and destroyed during the Russian October Revolution. The Russians took all the books and quite simply burnt them. That's Bolsheviks for you.
Und hatten sofort, wir hatten es genannt, Bolschewike.
Jesus Christus. Halleluja.
Haben uns verfolgt.
We were persecuted because the majority of the local men were murdered by the Germans. And yet, in the end, their children married our children.
Am Ende haben sich ihre Kinder.
Presently, most have gone back to Germany.
Und jetzt sind sie fast alle schon in Deutschland.
Das sind die, die Gott noch gar nicht kennen. Und damit will er sagen, Jesus, ist dazu gekommen, dass alle Gott so kennenlernen, wie wirklich ist.
В советское время было гонение христиан.
In Soviet times, Christians were persecuted, all Christians, Orthodox and Catholics above all, but also those of other denominations and religious beliefs. That had a bearing upon the number of faithful in the Catholic Church. It had always been a minority and suffered multiple repressions in Stalinist times.
Всегда было меньшинством, но которое тоже в годы сталинской эпохи и других репрессий очень пострадало.
Our biggest problem remains a lack of priests. Today we have 270 priests in Russia, of which 90% are foreigners from 22 different countries of the world. A shortage of churches comes to a close second. There are too few throughout Russia, the Urals no exception. We don't need big churches but small chapels. That would help people enormously. Of course, the church's financial situation is also very difficult. Faithful are few and poor, which is why we also need help in this area. Aid to the Church in Need was among the first organizations to offer help. The first organization that I got to know that has already helped and continues to help. We're very grateful, because without their support, we would be unable to act in many areas. I'm convinced that we will need help for a long time to come.
Невозможно было бы сделать то, что было сделано. И я думаю, что мы в этой помощи должны будем нуждаться еще долгое время.
Wir befinden uns hier in Barovsk. Es ist eine Siedlung im Norden.
We are in Barovsk. It's an estate from socialist times, located in the northern part of the city of Solikamsk. There is no church here, Orthodox or otherwise. We want to build a Catholic church here.
Uns hat man angeboten, bei den Fabrikgebäuden.
To begin with, we were advised to build the church on the lower muddy terrain on a former factory site, which made absolutely no sense. The new mayor, however, concluded that if anybody in the West found out about this, Solikamsk would suffer shame throughout Europe. He therefore ordered his officials to find a better site, and that is presently our great hope. We will begin building the church the moment we receive a site.
Würden wir beginnen mit dem Kirchenbau.
Чаще всего католические общины.
Catholic communities are more often than not spread throughout the country. That means that every priest's main aim must be to somehow serve his flock, however far and wide they're spread.
От основных городов. Не все прихожане могут.
Not all the faithful are able to come to a church located in a large city.
Это более большой город.
Wir sind relativ viel unterwegs. Ich bin verantwortlich für das ganze.
We are quite often on the road, responsible for the whole northern part of the Perm district.
Ausfahren wir jede Woche nach Solikamsk.
Once a week I drive from Berezniki to Solikamsk.
Feiern wir die Vorabendmesse in Jaiva.
Every Saturday evening we celebrate Holy Mass in Yaiva, where there is a small community. But the Holy Mass is above all for members of the School of Life, a community of drug and alcohol addicts who want to rid themselves of their addiction together.
Von ihrer Abhängigkeit geheilt.
Yaiva lies about 30 kilometers from Berezniki, whilst Solikamsk lies 40 kilometers to the north.
Und so wie jetzt fahren wir alle 3
In addition, once every 3 weeks, we also travel 150 kilometers to Rybinina, a town with a population of 3,000 that lies south of Cherdyn.
Dort haben wir jetzt vor, auch eine Kirche zu bauen.
We also want to build a church there, but it would not only serve Rybinina, but also all the Catholics from the town of Cherdyn.
In Rybinina, da sind wir noch gar nicht lange.
We haven't been in Rybinina very long, in fact about a year and a half.
Aber dort ist eine ganz
There is a German minority
intensive,
group here,
emsige
very
Gruppe
active
von
and committed,
Österreichdeutschen,
though others have
auch
also
schon,
appeared.
auch andere dazu
And I do not
gekommen.
believe this to have happened by chance, but rather that our dear God created the necessary conditions, enabling us to begin building a church here under the chosen patronage of our beloved Mother from Fatima.
Titel Unsere liebe Frau von Fatima. Начинается уже 21-го, но ничего.
Этот поселок построили репрессированные. Этими людьми, кто здесь отбывали.
This settlement was built by victims of repression. People convicted and deported here to serve part of their sentence. They built this place with their own hands. Our parents built this.
Да, вот наших родителей. Мы строим новые планы. Мы все, конечно, хотим.
Today we plan anew. We, of course, all want this land where so much blood, sweat and tears of so many repressed people has been spilt to become a holy place, the site of a church. That is our great desire. This is the second year that we meet here. There are fewer people here today than usual. Usually many come, and many more would come, but you can see for yourself. This is only a club. If all of us together, and with your help, manage to build a church, then our lives will not have been in vain. That's what I think. Of course, from today's perspective, it's all like a fairy story. The material barriers presently seem to be insurmountable. It will only be realized with God's help. When Father Erich organized a trip for us to Berezniki and recounted how the church was built there, he continually referred to how God helped him, how everything had come about, as it had been planned, thanks to chance circumstances created by God. We are also counting on them.
Right, as we only have a couple of minutes left, time for tea. From Rybinina, we drive east for about an hour to Krasnovyshevsk, and then for another 2.5 hours to get back home. So in all, we have been on the road for nearly 500 kilometers today in order to celebrate the Holy Mass twice.
Da sehe ich eben den Plan Gottes, dass Stalin.
I have to say that I do discern the mystery of God's plan in how Stalin dispersed Catholics throughout his empire, which is why some say, with irony, that Stalin was a great missionary.
So, also.
You don't look so good, Father.
Ich war sehr krank.
I had a fever of 39 degrees last night. There was a big freeze outside. I didn't know what to do.
Eine Stadt, Krasnovyshevsk,
The city of Krasnovyshevsk was once inhabited by many, many Russian Germans, but nearly all of them were deported, whilst others died. Only a few families remain with which we are in touch and which we visit once every 3 weeks, out of respect, as well as to celebrate the Holy Mass for these people in their homes.
Во имя Отца и Сына и Святого Духа. Аминь. Слава Иисусу Христу во веки веков. Аминь. Und manchmal denke ich mir, ja,
I sometimes think to myself how building the church and other matters will proceed. Enough that the good Lord knows, and that is my greatest source of strength. That great trust that God will always act, that he in a sense also loves risk, loves situations where somebody undertakes an endeavour saying, in human terms, it makes no sense. In fact, it should not be done at all. But because I feel that you expect it of me, I trust you absolutely.